Another question I have about yourself is this: has any of the views that you've held before, because I know you did a lot of research for 30 years, has any of them changed at all, or are they still the same, or have they evolved or anything?
Oh, well, they've evolved, and if they hadn't, then what have I been doing?
Well, I'm saying
Uh,
from your research, like for example, the
yeah, yeah,
moon
that's
and
what
yeah,
that's what I mean.
okay,
But if I go back, decades, what I'm saying now is in theme just the same. It's just that I now know more. I know more detail than I did then because I've done 30 years of research since then. But the themes from the earliest times to now are exactly the same. It's just that the detail has been added and added and added and added, and as you do that, you obviously understand what's happening in more and more depth. And the other thing that happens is that as you go on this journey of discovery, you start to see what really matters against what's interesting. So you would find things earlier on. Oh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Oh my goodness. And you talk about them and you write about them. But as you go forward and forward and forward, you start to sift out not what's irrelevant, but you sift out what's interesting from what is absolutely vital for people to know. And so you become more and more focused in the information that you communicate. So I've just finished a book now. I've literally just finished it, which is going to come out soon, which is going to include this whole coronavirus situation as well as enormous amounts of other things. And it is an extremely focused book on what absolutely really matters and what people really need to know now. So that's what's changed, but not the thrust of the theme. No.
okay, good. Yeah, I was just curious because I know myself through my research throughout the years, going through every rabbit hole possible. A lot of my theories changed, and then I eventually said, you know what? I don't even care about the details. The same theme applies. There's so evil people controlling the world, manipulating the masses of people to do whatever they want to do with their power. But let's get to the topic of the show, which is Sabbatean Frankism. And one of my
Yeah.
litmus tests to see if people are on the right track, in my opinion, is if they criticize Israel and criticize certain groups that are not allowed to be criticized. And you have been doing that. In fact, when I read your book, you mentioned Rothschild Zionism. And that
Yeah.
really was like, okay, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole. And this goes down to World War II and all this other stuff and
Yeah.
crazy rabbit holes. And, so that's my litmus. If someone does not talk about these people, then I'm like, well, they're missing. Either they're misleading it on purpose or they just don't know. But you certainly know because I've seen your tweets. I'm always retweeting you about Israel, and because they play a crucial role in this New World Order. And with the building of the third temple and all these weird messianic prophecies they want to fulfill and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
so let's go in. What is Sabbatean Frankism? Because that's the first time I heard it was from you. So if you can go ahead and explain what that is.
Well, yeah. Let me say also that a lot of my information about Sabbatean Frankism comes from Jewish sources. There are people in the Jewish community who've understood that they have been hijacked by this cult, which actually hates Jewish people. I mean, this is the irony. The way that this cult works, and this Sabbatean Frankism is a fundamentally important part of the global cult in general. The way it works is through infiltration. It infiltrates through hacking into computer systems on that level, but it infiltrates by appearing to be what they're not. So, for instance, when this cult hijacks the Jewish community, it promotes itself, behaves, and speaks as if it is of the Jewish community. The same with the Islamic community, the same with the Roman Catholic Vatican community. They appear to be of the religion or of the culture or of the nation that they appear to be part of, when actually they're all masks on the same face that are manipulating those religions and communities to a global end. So what they do is when they've infiltrated communities or religions, they then manipulate themselves into positions of power. And you'll see them in a public situation where they might be appearing to be in opposition with each other. They might be appearing to be arguing with each other, to stand for very different things. But behind the scenes, they're actually agents for the same agenda. Simple thing. If you want to control a football match or a soccer match to the point where you know the result before the game starts, it's no good controlling one side. You'll influence the game, but you won't know the score before it starts. But if you control both sides and the referee, you know what the score is going to be before the game starts. And this is the way this cult operates. And you have to be very canny and very streetwise and very researched to pick through this web, this tapestry of deceit. So if we go back to the 1600s, the 17th century, there was a man emerged called Sabbatai Zevi, who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah, because there is this legend of a Messiah that will come, right, and will rule the world from Israel. Now, this Sabbatean Frankist cult, very quickly, is pushing an agenda that seeks to lead to that. Now, it's my view that at the inner core of this cult, they know it's a load of old crap. But in appearing to make prophecy and biblical prophecy happen, you pull in lots of people who are not part of the cult, don't even know there is a cult, to support you and press for what you want, because they believe that it's prophecy unfolding. You know, the whole Christian Zionist movement in America is based on believing biblical prophecy, which is why they're so focused on Israel. So anyway, this Sabbatai Zevi claimed to be the Jewish Messiah, and he had a massive following for its time. And then the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Islamic Ottoman Empire, where he was operating, basically gave him a choice of converting to Islam or they'd sort him out. So he did. And a lot of his followers, not all, but a lot of his followers converted to Islam and started to apparently encompass the Islamic religion. But behind the scenes, they were following the religion, not of Judaism, but of Sabbateanism, as it was called then. And Sabbateanism inverts everything. So what it did was take the Jewish religion, and where there was a Jewish religious fast day, in Sabbateanism it would be a feast day. You get the picture. Everything was inverted, and it became a satanic cult operating behind the scenes. So these followers of Zevi, who converted to Islam but didn't really, they were known as Donme, which means to turn religions. But actually they didn't. And this Sabbateanism started to expand, and it really struck, the sprint began in the next century, the 18th century, when along came a man called Jacob Frank, And Jacob Frank claimed to be the reincarnation of Zevi, i.e., the Jewish Messiah, and the reincarnation of the biblical patriarch Jacob. And Frank really started this expansion of the Donme principle of infiltrating different religions and different societies, take them over. He really focused, for instance, on infiltrating and hijacking Roman Catholicism through the Vatican. And he did something else. He was became a close associate of Mayer Amschel Rothschild. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was the founder of the Rothschild dynasty. The family up to that point, which was an occult family, was called Bauer. And he changed it to Rothschild, which means red shield in German, where they lived in Frankfurt at the time. And it referred to the Star of David that was on the, actually the Seal of Solomon, from a Sabbatean Frankist point of view, that was on the Rothschild house in Frankfurt. And Jacob Frank and Mayer Amschel Rothschild, who became a Sabbatean, it became known as Sabbatean Frankism then, got together with a frontman called Adam Weishaupt to create the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776. And the Sabbatean Frankist cult, death cult, satanic cult, its holy book is the Kabbalah, a particular version of the Kabbalah, and particularly a work of the Kabbalah called the Zohar. And Zohar means radiance or illumination, which is where the inspiration, no doubt, of Illuminati came from. And illumination means illuminated into a wider understanding of reality in the simplest terms. And this cult understands how reality works. It understands how mind and perception interact with reality to create experience. It knows that if it can hijack the perception of the population, it will dictate their experience, not just through perception becoming experience in the way I described earlier, but literally through, if you like, the law of physics as it really is, that your perceptions become your experienced reality. So it knows that if it can get control of the perception of the target population, it will control experience in so many ways. And I go into this in the books in a very deep way, and it can be explained very simply. Anyway, what the Sabbatean Frankists then did was start to infiltrate a wider and wider part of the world. And it was Sabbatean Frankism that was behind the creation of Zionism, which is not a race, it is a political philosophy. Yeah. And it was Sabbatean Frankism. I go into this in my latest book, The Trigger, where I show that Sabbatean Frankists were behind 9/11 and not 19 Arab hijackers. And I tell the story of Sabbatean Frankism as part of this exposure of the real perpetrators of 9/11. So they were also, as I talk about in the book, were behind Hitler and the Nazis, etc. And then they created Israel. And it was a creation that pulled in large numbers of Jewish people who were believing in Israel from the point of view of biblical texts, etc., and had no idea that it was being orchestrated by this cult. And the reason that Israel, with around an 8 million population in a world fast approaching 8 billion, has so much influence on the world is because of this cult. And I have a chapter in the Trigger called Atlantic Crossing, which is about how this cult moved in on America. And in true Sabbatean Frankist infiltration technique of takeover, it infiltrated the Pentagon, which it's taken over. It infiltrated the intelligence community like the CIA, the National Security Agency, and so on. And it infiltrated American politics big time. And if you look at this vast network of apparently Israeli Zionist organizations in America, like AIPAC, and its vast network of organizations, massively funded, what you're looking at is different dots, different strands in this Sabbatean Frankist web. And again, most people in these organizations won't know that there's a cult, only the inner core. The rest will think that what they're doing is for the benefit of Israel. So it was through this infiltration of the intelligence and military and political systems in America that they pulled off 9/11. And that's why, as I expose in detail in the book, and another guy, Christopher Bolin, has done tremendous research on this over the years in America, that the ratio of what I would call ultra extreme Zionists and positions of power before, during, and after, in terms of the cover-up, of 9/11 is absolutely breathtakingly staggering. And this brings us round to a topical happening now, which is the expansion, the massive expansion being accepted by governments and political parties and institutions and universities and states in America of an expanded version of anti-Semitism. The irony is anti-Semitism actually means anti-Arab in truth, because Semitism relates to a group of languages in the Middle East, the overwhelmingly vast majority of which are Arabic languages. So even the term anti-Semitism is a misnomer, but it's used as, well, you well know, I well know, so many other people well know, to demonize and discredit anyone who is challenging the behavior of the Israeli government. Not, the Jewish people. I say in the Trigger, no one needs to read that book more than the Jewish community of the world to see how they're being scammed by this cult.
Yeah.
Because, I'm interviewed a few times a year by two lovely Jewish guys out of Israel who can see, what's happening. And, you talk to them, people say, oh, the Jews, they get 3.8 billion from the American government. No, they don't. The Sabbatean Frankist elite get that to spend on their armaments and their massively expanding, ever expanding cyber space control. And so many Jewish people in Israel, a country that is vastly rich, my God, for its size, live lives of deprivation and poverty. We're talking about the Palestinians even beyond that. So when people say it's the Jews, they are playing into the hands of the Sabbatean Frankists, who then say, see, you're an anti-Semite. Mm-hmm. And that's something that just people need to grasp and start to change the language, because the last people I'm exposing and condemning is the Jewish community in general. I'm condemning and exposing that cult operating within them that has scammed them and is posing as their leaders, not just their political leaders, but Mossad the intelligence, infamous intelligence network, and Shin Bet, the domestic Israeli intelligence network, and the Israeli military in general. Those people that control all that are not Jewish people who are following, if you like, the Jewish religion. They are Sabbatean Frankists, members of this cult. And so what you're looking at, and the same happens in Britain and in other European countries, you're looking at this expansion of the definition of anti-Semitism to include what now? Criticism of Israel. How can you have a definition of which should read something like this? If you want to use the misnomer anti-Semitism, a very fair definition would be hatred of Jewish people because they are Jewish, like hatred of black people because they are black.
Yeah,
these are very simple, profound, and accurate definitions. But now we have a situation where criticizing a government is somehow, quote, racist, as they claim, to the point where speakers at American universities are being banned from speaking unless they take a pledge of allegiance, in effect, to Israel. So then you ask the question, how can this tiny country on this sliver of land in the Middle East have the kind of power that has universities in America, the supposedly, superpower, say that people can't speak there unless they pledge allegiance to Israel? Where does that power come from? Answer: the Sabbatean Frankist cult. That's where it comes from. And that's why, and people are shocked when I give these figures, but they are accurate. When I say to people, how many Jewish people do you think there are in the world? They'll say 500 million or 2 million or, even more, I've heard people say. And actually, it's around 16 million, a mean figure,
yeah.
which works out at about 0.2% of the world population. 0.2% of people in the world are Jewish. Now look at the power of Israel. Now, how do you equate 0.2% of the population with that apparent power? Let me emphasize that apparent power, because the vast majority of the 0.2% don't have that power. How do you equate the massive influence of ultra-Zionist representatives in America from a Jewish population of 2%? How do you equate that? How you equate that is this: Sabbatean Frankist cult. That's the key to understanding where this power comes from. And what they're doing is leading the Jewish community into a nightmare as much as they are the rest of the world, but they hide behind the Jewish community to allow it to happen and to defend themselves from exposure.